One of the most effective devices for personal protection around moving machinery is a lockout and tagout program. Over the years, these devices have been responsible for reducing and eliminating accidents and injuries related to moving machinery. When you hear the words lockout and tagout, it means locking up the energy sources of a machine so it cannot be started. The tagout part of the term refers to placing a tag on a locked machine, so everyone will be aware that a particular machine is under repair or maintenance.
The ANSI Z244-1-2003 is the revised lockout and tagout standards and defines a comprehensive safety program for lockout tagout. It presents an opportunity to improve plant safety programs, and through this, it improves the bottom line by reducing exposures, accidents, and injuries. Complying with the ANSI Z244.1 standards requires an accurate and complete tabulation and risk assessment of every piece of equipment and machinery, including your out-of-service and your surplus equipment. Such assessments typically result from working with supervisors and operators at all levels in the plant and on the plant floor. Participation by everyone will help reinforce commitment to the safety program. And reinforcing that commitment is very important in reducing injuries and the potential exposures. The new procedure requires a safety administrator, a knowledgeable individual who is responsible for all aspects of the safety program and has the authority to act on the assessment findings. Without that authority, then the assessment would prove useless. You need an individual with the authority to act on the findings. Before initiating a hazardous energy control methodology and risk assessment, the safety administrator needs to understand the following basics: definition of machine and energy hazards, the scope and application of the lockout tagout standard, qualified exceptions to the rule, and any unusual circumstances that could result in accidents. Under the standard, this includes electrical, mechanical, hydraulic, pneumatic, chemical, nuclear, thermal, and gravity. Don't forget to consider stored energy such as large capacitors, hydraulic and pneumatic accumulators, and batteries. Each has its own set of hazards, and each may require different methods of isolation or energy reduction. Assess every energy source in detailed written procedures. Remember, in some cases, a machine or a piece of equipment may be powered by more than one power source or have hidden or latent sources of energy. A common example of two power sources would be a machine tool with electrical and hydraulics. Both electrical and hydraulics must be locked out. After documenting all energy sources, someone familiar with safety hazard performs the second step, identifying each potential safety hazard associated with each machine. A hazard assessment must also consider all possible situations that could result in injury, from startup of a machine to accidental release of stored energy. Once completed, the assessment becomes the foundation for developing complete and thorough energy control procedures. At a minimum, the hazard assessment should be based on rating each hazard for the potential frequency of exposure and the potential severity of injury. Don't forget to include possible human error, deficiencies in the management system, written procedures, as well as foreseeable misuse of the machine. This stage demands a consistent and reasonable rating system.
The people most likely to perform lockout and tagout are mechanics and repair professionals. These individuals work on machinery and naturally want to protect themselves from the dangers of a machine starting or moving while they're working on it. Affected employees is the appropriate terminology for those employees, as they would be greatly affected by any accidental starting of the machine or equipment they're working on. An authorized employee is the person who is authorized by the company to lock or implement a tagout system procedure on machinery or equipment. usually to perform servicing or maintenance on that machine or equipment. While the two terms describe different situations, an authorized employee and an affected employee may be the same person. If an affected employee's duties also include performing maintenance or service on a machine or piece of equipment that must be locked, or have a tagout system implemented, then that employee would be both an authorized and an affected employee. Other employees who work or may work in an area where energy control procedures are or may be utilized must also be trained about the procedures. This training includes the importance relating to attempts to restart or re-energize machines or equipment which are locked out or tagged out. In other words, an employee may be a machine operator but not a mechanic. In such cases, the employee will not be the one to lock out and tag out the machine. However, this employee still needs to understand the procedures of lockout and tagout and the importance of not trying to restart a machine that has been locked or tagged out by a mechanic or other authorized employee. Basically, when a lockout and tag are placed on a machine, the person placing the lock and tag are the only ones that can remove it. In certain circumstances, a supervisor or other authorized person may remove it. As machine operators, you cannot remove locks or tags. Let's first recognize that for a machine to do its job, it must have some form of energy to make it operate. The key words to remember here are energy sources. When we mention energy sources, we most often think about electrical power. However, on many machines and equipment, energy sources may include mechanical energy, hydraulic energy, pneumatic energy, chemical energy, thermal energy, or other energy sources. Because each machine is different and may have multiple sources of energy, the first step in developing an effective lockout-tagout program is to identify all the energy sources of each machine. Once identified, the person securing the machine will have written procedures that spell out which energy sources require locking out before maintenance or repairs of the machine are attempted. Some machines will require 2, 3, or even more energy sources to be locked out in order to render it safe to work on. Failure to control these energy sources during repairs or maintenance on the equipment could result in serious injury or death to the authorized employee doing such work. This is a term used to describe a machine's function while it's operating as intended. Machine operators often perform activities during normal production operations that are properly classified as servicing or maintenance. These activities include lubricating, cleaning, unjamming, and making minor adjustments and simple tool changes. During any of these operations, the employee could be exposed to the unexpected energy release or startup of the equipment. This unexpected startup is called release of hazardous energy. There are certain safety precautions that must be used during these operations to make sure the operator is protected from any release of hazardous energy. Generally, this is accomplished with machine guarding on the equipment or machine, and such measures must be demonstrated to provide equal protection to lockout and tagout. If such engineering controls do not protect the operator, lockout and tagout must be used. Before an authorized or affected employee turns off a machine or piece of equipment, they shall have knowledge of the type and magnitude of the energy, the hazards of the energy to be controlled, and the method or means to control the energy. This means if there are 5 energy sources to be secured, the authorized or affected employee knows all the energy sources and how to control them. This is an orderly shutdown that must be utilized to avoid any additional or increased hazards to employees as a result of equipment de-energization. Isolation of the machine or equipment means all energy isolating devices that are needed to control the energy to the machine or equipment shall be physically located and operated in such a manner as to isolate the machine or equipment from the energy source or sources. Lockout or tagout device application is where the lockout or tagout devices shall be affixed to each energy isolating device by authorized employees. Lockout devices, where used, shall be affixed in a manner that will hold the energy in a safe or off position. Tagout devices, where used, shall be affixed in such a manner as will clearly indicate that the operation or movement of energy isolating devices from the safe or off position is prohibited. Prior to starting work on any locked out and/or tagged out machine or equipment, the authorized employee must verify that isolation and de-energization of the machine or equipment has been accomplished. Isolation of hazardous energy sources cannot be considered complete until the isolation is verified. Before lockout or tagout devices are removed and energy is restored to the machine or equipment, certain procedures shall be followed and actions taken by the authorized employee or employees to ensure the following. The work area shall be inspected to ensure that non-essential items have been removed. This would include cleaning supplies such as rags and chemicals, as well as any tools that may have been used. The machine or equipment must be inspected to verify that the machine or equipment components are operationally intact. The work area shall be checked to ensure that all employees have been safely positioned or removed. Before lockout or tagout devices are removed and before machines or equipment are re-energized, affected employees shall be notified. Each lockout or tagout device shall be removed from each energy isolating device by the employee who applied the device. This is very important, so let's say it again. The only person who can remove a lock or tag from an energy isolating device is the authorized employee who placed the lock and/or tag on the energy isolating device. There is one exception to this rule for those cases where shift work is involved or in the event an authorized employee is off duty when the machine or equipment is returned to service. When the authorized employee who applied the lockout or tagout device is not available to remove it, that device may be removed under the direction of the installer's immediate supervisor. Each department involved in lockout or tagout procedures shall provide specific training and procedures for such removal, and these procedures and training must be documented. The documentation shall demonstrate the safety equivalent to the original process of having only the installer remove the device is maintained. The specific procedure shall include at least the following elements. Verification by the employer that the authorized employee who applied the device is not at the facility. The employer must make a reasonable effort to contact the authorized employee to inform him or her that his or her lockout or tagout device has been removed, and the employer must ensure that the authorized employee has been informed of the lock and/or tag's removal before he or she resumes work at that facility. When servicing and/or maintenance is performed on machinery or equipment by multiple authorized personnel, they must utilize a procedure which affords the employees a level of protection equivalent to that provided by the implementation of a personal lockout or tagout device. The typical way this is accomplished is by each authorized employee affixing their personal lock and/or tag to the energy isolating device or devices. First, the primary authorized employee, using a multi-lock accepting device like the one shown here, applies his or her lock and/or tag, locking out the hazardous energy source. Subsequently, each of the other authorized personnel affix their personal lockout and/or tagout hardware to the multi-lock device before they begin working on the machine or equipment. They then remove their personal lock and/or tag when they have completed their work on the machine or equipment. Retraining shall be provided for all authorized and affected employees whenever there is a change in their job assignments, or if there's a change in machines, equipment, or process that presents a new hazard. Retraining is also required when there is a change in energy control procedures. All retraining must establish employee proficiency and introduce new or revised control methods and procedures as necessary. This short program has only provided the basics of lockout and tagout. Your supervisor will provide more information and training to make sure everyone knows the purpose of lockout, tagout, and how important it is to comply with all aspects of this important part of your safety program. If you're not sure about your equipment, machinery, lockout, tagout, or energy sources, it's up to you to ask questions and get the proper answers. Your safety is much too important to be left to surprises or accidents.